The pandemic illness called COVID-19 that is sweeping across the country is caused by a novel coronavirus that we now know as SARS-CoV-2. While some people who are infected with the virus are asymptomatic, many experienced symptoms ranging from mild respiratory symptoms such as cough or other somatic issues such as fatigue, fever, or sore throat. But some will experience more serious difficulty in breathing and even severe acute respiratory distress syndrome, ARDS, or even death. Do you know that coronavirus infection is not new to us? Approximately 10 to 30% of the common cold cases are caused by one of the 4 coronaviruses, with the elderly and very young being particularly susceptible. The symptoms of the common cold usually last for about a week or 2. Just like most of the respiratory viral infections, after an episode of fighting a cold, our immune system's response would provide us with protection by producing antibodies. And this protection is against that particular coronavirus and usually lasts for about a year. Of course, you could still catch common cold from other types of viruses. Besides the previously mentioned 4 coronaviruses, the usual suspects of viral pathogens that cause common cold include rhinovirus, enterovirus, RSV, which is respiratory syncytial virus, and parainfluenza. All of these common cold viruses are often screened by blood test panel for patients with respiratory symptoms. Because we, human, almost all of us will inevitably experience respiratory infections caused by one of the viruses throughout our lifetime. Therefore, even when we are attacked by these viruses, the symptoms we suffer from the illness are usually not very serious. However, the viral respiratory infection may cause serious outcome if it triggers an exacerbation of an underlying serious baseline medical conditions, such as heart disease, chronic lung conditions, or if it occurs in people with impaired immune systems, such as people with poorly controlled diabetes, patients undergoing chemotherapy for cancer, patients with autoimmune diseases taking immunosuppressants for organ transplantation, etc. SARS-CoV-2, it is completely new to human beings. The fact that humans have no biological experience with this virus means that the virus can completely startle our immune system, causing an extreme immune response with much higher risk of death compared to the coronaviruses that cause common cold and compared to influenza. SARS-CoV-2 can cause both direct and indirect damage to our bodies, cause a maladaptive immune response, leads to acute respiratory distress syndrome, ARDS, and subsequently multi-organ failure and death. People who are older than 60 years of age or people who are younger but with serious underlying medical conditions are at high risk of developing serious symptoms and poor outcome from this virus. In addition, unlike its cousins, SARS of 2002-2003 and MERS 2015, SARS-CoV-2 has even stronger affinity to human ACE2 receptors. And these receptors are located abundantly in our respiratory system, blood vessels, gastrointestinal tract, and bladder. Although the current mortality rate for COVID-19 is lower than that of SARS and MERS, the infectious rate is higher. And at this time, now today is March 23, 2020, it is estimated that the transmission rate without intervention, which is R0, is 3, meaning one infected person can infect at least 3 other people. So far, there's no proven effective antiviral therapy and there's no vaccine. The current data show that among 100 COVID-19 patients, about 15 to 20 of them may require hospitalization for supportive care. And a fraction of the hospitalized COVID-19 patients will require intensive care, including mechanical ventilation and extracorporeal membrane oxygenation, ECMO. A younger person without previous underlying serious disease, even if his COVID-19 is severe, so severe that he requires mechanical ventilation, he would have a much higher chance of recovery compared to an elder person or someone with prior poor health status. We have seen a high degree of variability in the mortality rate for COVID-19 across the globe. South Korea is on the low end with reported mortality rate of 0.8%, while Italy has a sobering mortality rate of 10%. with the lack of consistency in each area for testing and tracking the causes of the death, the true mortality rate is hard to accurately determine. To put those numbers into perspective, the mortality for influenza is 0.8 in a bad year, and is about 0.1 in a good year. We need to remember that when dealing with influenza, we have vaccines and effective antiviral therapy. If the R0 of SARS-CoV-2 is 3, which means one person spread to 3 people or more, then 2/3 of the human population will need to have immunity in order to stop the virus from continuing to spread. There are only 2 ways to obtain this immunity. Either a person becomes infected by the virus and recovered, or a person must be inoculated with the vaccine specific for this virus. The process of developing a vaccine has much higher stringent standards than the process of developing a medication, because vaccines are biological products to healthy people to activate immune response. The development process from preclinical research to the end of the phase 3 clinical trial can often take 7 to 10 years and cost $1 billion US. Hopefully, in the next 18 to 24 months, we'll have an effective vaccine for SARS-CoV-2. As mentioned previously, without the vaccine, the only way to get immunity is through getting the infection. From what we have seen from the end of December to now, March 23, 2020, COVID-19 has spread rapidly across the globe, and there are few signs of it slowing down. Therefore, at this time, I think that we have to accept that 2/3 of us will probably be infected before the virus stops spreading. If we have the good fortune to develop a SARS-CoV-2 vaccine in a year or 2, then we can have some help for the next time when and if this virus goes around. Since we have to come to terms with the high likelihood of getting infected ourselves, we should work hard to delay our own infection as much as possible. At this time, there are a large number of people, many of whom suffering tremendously in the densely populated metropolitan areas across the United States, such as New York City. So the transmission seems likely to continue unabated. Our entire country is pouring every effort into supporting the worst affecting locations by sending medical equipment, healthcare personnel, and personal protective materials to supplement the existing and currently profoundly strained healthcare system in those areas. We Central Floridians live in a relatively less populated and much warmer region of the country. We should try our best to flatten the infection curve. I'll use an example. Theoretically, in a small city, if without a strong effort in flattening the curve, this virus is going to cause 1,000 people to suffer a serious form of COVID-19 that require hospitalization or even critical care over the next 2 weeks. If the healthcare capacity of the city can only handle 500 critically ill patients, then the other 500 seriously ill patients would not be able to help with our standard of care, because there may not be enough medical equipment and healthcare workers to give them the full spectrum of critical care. And this would leave those 500 untreated or undertreated people with a very high likelihood of dying. We have seen the scenario play itself out in Italy. We also need to keep in mind that there are always other non-COVID-19 who may need critical medical attention. Those patients will also suffer and may even die when the healthcare system is overwhelmed in taking care of large number of critically ill COVID-19 patients. Therefore, it behooves everyone in this city to do his part to slow down the spread of the virus by making the narrow and sharply peaked infectious curve to a flat, albeit wider based curve. The top of the curve remain within the maximum capacity of the healthcare system in this area. Even though the base of the flat curve is wider than the high peaked curve, the area underneath the curve, that is the total number of the patients, will be smaller compared to the high-peaked and narrow-based curve. An analogy of flattening the infectious curve I would like to use is that the amount of rainfall we would get over the course of a year. Imagine the amount of rain for this year is going to be 10 times the average. Wouldn't you rather have this season span over a period of a few months at least, rather than a horrid, non-stop deluge of rain over a course of a few weeks that would flood the entire state? So, what should we do? How should we do our part to mitigate the pandemic? First, as common sense dictates, whenever you have any respiratory symptoms, regardless whether it is caused by SARS-CoV-2, wear a mask so that you can prevent others from getting the virus from you through droplets when you talk, cough, or sneeze. In fact, even when you are not sick, during the pandemic of a respiratory infection such as this, it is prudent to wear a mask wherever you are in public, especially indoor when there are people around. The mask can be made of cloth, as any barrier to the droplets is better than none. And of course, when you are out in nature, open air, no one's around within 8 feet of you, then you may not need to wear a mask. Physical distancing, which is also called social distancing, by 6 feet is one of the best measures to slow down the spread of COVID-19. Second, since SARS-CoV-2 is a viral pathogen, it spreads mostly through droplets and contact, just as other viral pathogens that cause respiratory disease spread. Surfaces that receive droplets and are likely to carry the infection are called fomites, F-O-M-I-T-E. These include clothing, eating utensils, furniture, and all objects with which we often come into contact, such as telephone, desk, keyboards, laptop, and doorknobs. When we touch these objects, the virus-containing droplets are lifted off the surface and carried on our skin. When we use our virus-laden hands to touch our face, the viruses can easily get transferred into the mucosal area of our mouth, nostrils, and eyes, which cause us to become infected. Therefore, frequent hand washing using soap, and if there's no water, hand cleaning sanitizers containing at least 60% of alcohol is essential after you touch any objects located in an area that sees a lot of foot traffic and people touching surfaces. When you clean your hands, it is important to remember to allow at least 20 seconds for the soap or sanitizer fluid to work on deactivating the viruses. When I say hands, it is not just your palms. It is extremely important to thoroughly clean your fingertips, since it is your fingertips that transfer viruses to your mouth, nose, and eyes. Most people, including myself, unknowingly use our hands to touch our faces throughout the day. If you find that you have trouble not touching your face, then you might benefit from wearing a mask all the time, no matter you are indoors or outdoors, no matter if there are people around you. This way, the mask can act as a barrier. When you accidentally touch your face with your hands, presumably covered with viruses that hand has lifted from other surfaces, all you touch is your mask. I recently made a few 3-layered cloth masks, but I find it's not easy to breathe through 3 layers of 100% cotton cloth. At that time, I was not able to find high thread count cloth or flannel from the stores. But I think that a 2-layered mask fit Floridians better during the long summer. This is what I made. 3 layers. In fact, in the hot summer of Florida, a 2-layer mask may be more comfortable. But of course, the cloth needs to be high quality, heavy weight, the thread count of at least 180, or flannel. In addition, stay at home or shelter in place 2 weeks or a month is very effective in limiting people movement and droplets or contact transmission, and hence slowing down the spread of infection. A longer period may not be easy to tolerate in terms of personal freedom or economic activities. However, 2 weeks to 4 weeks of severely cutting down the frequency of interaction with people will flatten the infectious curve. It is possible that when people resume normal pre-COVID-19 activities and forget to continue the practice of social or physical distancing or hand hygiene, we may see the COVID-19 infection rate increases. And at that time, we may have to repeat stay at home or other forms of reducing interaction between people for another few weeks or a month. I don't know. But in the meantime, I'm hopeful that we'll be able to use a combination of rapid testing for antibody to know who is immune and rapid testing for the virus itself to help people who are carrying the virus intensify their effort of self-quarantine. This would reduce the need for a community-wide stay-at-home order. Detecting antibody will allow people to go back to work sooner, And detecting the virus will let people know to intensify their social distancing. Until then, let us be good citizens. Stay at home and observe social distancing. Protect yourself and your families, and protect all of us.
You're on.
2 layers of white cloth, 100% cotton, 3 layers here, 3, right? And the elastic band is here. And this is how, oops. Later we're going to sew it this way, like this, or this. And that's how 3 layers will give you some protection, even though it's not going to be like surgical mask. It's better than nothing, and at least it will help you keeping your hands off your face.